We're gonna call ourselves to order actually on time today, since we can. First up will be approval of our agenda for the day, which we can do by consensus, and you already changed it, so we don't have to do any additional stuff, right? Okay.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Any other changes necessary to our agenda that you guys know of? All right, hearing nothing, we can consider our agenda approved as presented and move on to approval of our minutes from August 1st. And we'll take a motion second from anyone who is present at that meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Cecily, a second from Monica. Are there any corrections needed to those minutes? Right, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, minutes are approved. What is this?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to give myself a public pat on the back. I used to go to other committee meetings where I'd inadvertently vote and I was ex officio and didn't have the right to vote. And I am just so proud of myself for keeping my mouth shut during votes. So I had to say that because it was becoming a joke with some of my colleagues, so.
So right here, you're
Sorry.
paying.
You would not be the first one, it's come up before. All right, that brings us to the public invitation portion of our meeting for anyone that wants to address the commission on things not on our agenda. Do we have anyone registered this month?
We don't.
Okay. If anyone wants to speak at a future meeting, there's an email address on our posted agenda that you can contact staff to get on our list. That'll bring us to our first business item for the day, which is a long-range plan for Rice Creek West Regional Trail in Anoka County. We have Colin, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Council Member, Commissioners. I am Colin Kelly, Planning Analyst, and I'm here to present the Rice Creek West Regional Trail Long Range Plan on behalf of Anoka County. I should note that Karen Blaska, Anoka County Planner, is here today and may respond to questions after this approximately 15-minute long presentation as needed. Let's see if this works. This is not going to be working. Oh.
That's
fine. Okay, we're back. So, Rice Creek West Regional Trail is located in the north central part of the Regional Parks and Trails System in the southern part of Anoka County, sometimes called the Panhandle, and the city of Fridley. The submitted long-range plan focuses on the 4-mile-long portion of Rice Creek West Regional Trail within Anoka County. A portion of the trail continues into Ramsey County before connecting with Long Lake Regional Park and Rice Creek North Regional Trail. The figures before you are figures 1 through 4 in the staff report. Over the next several slides, I'll cover key components of the analysis that appear in the staff report, beginning with the equity analysis and concluding with a set of proposed actions for your consideration. The equity analysis asks implementing agencies to respond to a series of questions in 3 categories: project data, public engagement and participation, and the evaluation summary. With regard to project data, Anoka County examined the demographics of the area at several scales to determine who may be underserved and who should be consulted during the trail planning process. As a result, targeted outreach focused on those under the age of 25, folks over the age of 65, people of color, and people with disabilities. The city of Fridley, where the trail is located, is more racially diverse than other parts of Anoka County, with Black, Indigenous, and people of color comprising up to 53% of the population within a 1-mile radius of the trail. Trail planners learned this and other demographic information using the Met Council's Regional Park and Trails Equity Tool. In addition to the other groups referenced, the engagement process sought to connect with younger people. The submitted plan notes the importance of providing memorable experiences for younger generations, as well as providing more welcoming and inclusive spaces for all trail users. From a public engagement perspective, the county reached out to outdoor Latino and outdoor Afro groups during the planning process as well as the Disability and Aging Network. All groups, but specifically the Disability and Aging Network, brought up the steep trail grades and the potential for vehicular conflicts at major road crossings, which make the trail less accessible to people with mobility restrictions and other disabilities. Reflecting on this engagement, trail planners say most all of the proposed improvements are a direct result of engagement and include grade separated crossings of high-speed roads, trail segment reconstruction for improved access, and a single track mountain bike trail to serve a wider spectrum of potential users. Also, feedback from Outdoor Latino suggested that providing more park and trail information in Spanish would help make the Latino population feel more welcome and comfortable using the trail. Anoka County will continue to work with underserved communities and other interested parties as implementation of the trail plan continues. Public and partner engagement. For your reference, these are currently 2 separate requirements in the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan that are summarized on a single slide here. Let's start with public engagement. The county engaged the public on multiple occasions during the planning process and used a variety of methods, including in-person meetings, events, surveys, and social media. Through these methods, the county reached more than 15,000 people. The issue or topic raised most often was trail safety. Nearly every group engaged brought up some aspect of safety along the trail corridor. Bicyclists had concerns about sharp curves and sight lines, while walkers had more concerns about personal safety, trash, graffiti, homelessness, and loitering. Based on discussions with community members, the plan proposes to add lighting in higher use areas, remove buckthorn for better sight lines, and so users can see their surroundings easier, as well as to increase safety patrols. From a partner engagement perspective, Anoka County placed significant emphasis on engaging the city of Fridley during the trail planning process. The county engaged the city through their city council, Parks Commission, Police Citizens Advisory Committee, Environmental Quality and Energy Commission, and the community network. The county also engaged the Rice Creek Watershed District, County Highway Department, Minnesota Department of Transportation, the Target Distribution Center, and Medtronic. In their comments on the draft plan, the Watershed District noted the sediment accumulation in Lock Lake and is hopeful the stream bank restoration projects it completed will slow that sedimentation from occurring. The county will continue to work with the city of Fridley and the Rice Creek Watershed District as individual projects move toward implementation. Finally, the Anoka County Board of Commissioners and the City of Fridley City Council both provided resolutions of support for the Rice Creek West Regional Trail Long Range Plan. Those appear as attachments 1 and 2 in your staff report. Boundaries. The original Long Range Plan for Rice Creek West Regional Trail dates to 1980. As such, the regional trail boundaries are already well established. That said, Anoka County and the City of Fridley own different parts of the regional trail corridor and previously partnered through a Joint Powers Agreement, or JPA, to offer this amenity to residents of the region. In November 2022, the city terminated the JPA, but the city has granted an easement to the county for the regional trail, and the county is responsible for the operations and maintenance of the trail through city property and the entirety of the trail corridor in Anoka County. In segment 6, shown on the right side of this slide, which is also figure 10 in the staff report, the county proposes the removal of a 1/10 of an acre non-contiguous parcel from the regional trail corridor boundary. No Met Council or state dollars were used on this parcel. According to the submitted plan, this parcel is cut off from the trail corridor by city right-of-way and has become a maintenance nuisance from people dumping their waste on the site. Because of the relatively small assessed value of the parcel at $8,600, the county was not able to secure a land-for-land exchange. Therefore, the county is proposing an equally valuable facility exchange, where proceeds of the land removed would be used for a trail reconstruction project of greater value within the same trail segment. The project will meet or exceed Americans with Disability Act or ADA standards. It's approximately 100 linear feet from the parcel proposed to be removed, and it's estimated to cost $34,000, nearly 4 times the value of the parcel. Council staff reviewed the land for facility request against the criteria outlined in System Protection Strategy 2 of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan. Staff find that the county's request meets the criteria of a land exchange. Upon completion of the improvements, Anoka County will continue to own and operate the trail corridor and land through this segment. The plan reflects the updated agreements and ownership between the city and the Met Council for the portions of the trail that traverse city-owned property. Moving into the development concept. Across all 6 segments, portions of the trail are to be reconfigured, reconstructed, and improved for access. From here, we'll move through each of the segments west to east, highlighting the major proposals for each segment. This slide covers the first 4 segments, and the next slide covers the last 2. For your reference, maps of the individual segments can be found in the staff report as figures 5 through 10. In segment 1, the Banfield Lock Historic House is proposed to serve as a staffed visitor center and trailhead, and 2 parking lots are to be reconstructed. The historic house needs improvements to ensure the structural integrity and energy efficiency of the building envelope, as well as updates to accommodate the new trailhead use. In segment 2, wayfinding is proposed to be improved in partnership with the city of Fridley. This could take the form of trail signage, or it could take the form of road decals. Share the road decals. In segment 3, a grade-separated crossing of Trunk Highway 47, also known as University Avenue, is proposed for a safe crossing of a high-speed road. Technical review of the trail plan by council transportation staff encourages Anoka County to coordinate with Metro Transit and the Minnesota Department of Transportation to improve crossing safety at the 69th Street intersection before committing to a more costly bridge or tunnel at this location. This advisory comment has been integrated into the proposed actions for this long-range plan, which we'll cover in just a few minutes. In segment 4, a bicycle and pedestrian bridge over Rice Creek near the eastern end of the segment is proposed to be replaced. However, this improvement is not anticipated to occur for approximately 10 to 15 years, but other improvements, including additional wayfinding and directional signage, are proposed to be implemented sooner. Moving on to segments 5 and 6, which are the easternmost segments of the regional trail in Anoka County. As with the first 4 segments, portions of the regional trail are to be reconfigured, reconstructed, and improved for access. For your reference, more detailed maps of both of these segments may be found in the staff report as figures 9 and 10. The development concept for segment 5 includes improving the existing bike ped tunnel at the eastern end of the segment through resurfacing, improving drainage, and increasing lighting efficiency. The plan also proposes replacing the existing bike ped bridge over Rice Creek about halfway through the segment. In addition, the county proposes constructing a natural surface hiking trail to offer a different kind of experience for trail corridor users, north of the regional trail itself. Lastly, a tunnel or bridge underpass under County State Aid Highway 35 is proposed to create a safer way to traverse this often busy roadway, as well as to address grade and accessibility concerns. In segment 6, the plan proposes to relocate and reconstruct the existing parking lot off of 69th Avenue, along with construction of a new restroom building and a trailhead facility with drinking water. The city of Fridley has expressed some safety concerns with this area and has requested that improvements include gates to restrict access to the parking area after closing, security cameras, lights, and emergency telephone connections. The county has incorporated these improvements into their plan. Also, based on public engagement, the plan proposes to develop 4 miles of easy, family-friendly single-track mountain bike trail. Lastly, like in segment 5, this segment proposes a natural surface hiking trail as well. The total estimated development and improvement cost associated with the Rice Creek West Regional Trail Long Range Plan is $27,130,000. While some of the more costly improvements are proposed to occur within the next 2 years, for example, the renovation of the Banfield Lock House as a new trailhead and visitor center for an estimated $1.6 million, the great majority of the estimated costs are proposed to occur 10 to 20 years from now. Over $17.5 million worth of improvements are proposed for this post-2034 timeframe. Put another way, Anoka County proposes to implement this plan over the next 20 years, with the greatest proportion of estimated costs occurring after 2034. No acquisition of additional parcels is proposed, and the estimated annual operating cost is approximately $40,000. The rationale for the proposed action or actions coming up next is that the Rice Creek West Regional Trail Long Range Plan is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, including Chapter 5, Strategy 1, Chapter 6, Strategy 2, and other council policies. And so, the proposed actions before you then are that the Metropolitan Council, 1, approve Anoka County's Rice Creek West Regional Trail Long Range Plan. 2, approve the removal of a 1/10 of an acre non-contiguous parcel of land within Rice Creek West Regional Trail Corridor in exchange for a trail reconstruction project of greater value that will meet or exceed Americans with Disabilities Act standards within the Regional Trail Corridor. 3, require Anoka County, prior to initiating any construction, to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services Interceptor Engineering Assistant Manager. 4, advise Anoka County to coordinate planning and work with Metro Transit and the Minnesota Department of Transportation to improve crossing safety at the 69th Street intersection before committing to a tunnel at this location. And 5, advise Anoka County to consider implementing the recommendations for solar and transportation in the advisory comments section of the business item. And with that, I will stand for your questions and remind you that Anoka County staff is here as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Colin. Questions, commissioners? Really?
Okay. I had to read proposed action number 2 about 5 times. You know, I get what's happening and it makes sense, but it's not really an even exchange. And, you know, it doesn't tell me what's happening to that approximately $8,600. Is that's getting rolled into the cost of developing the other trail section? Is that what I'm reading?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Harris, indeed, the $8,600 valued parcel, that 1/10 of an acre parcel, is proposed for an exchange for the $34,000 trail reconstruction project. So it's not really an equally valuable exchange. The facility part of this exchange is nearly 4 times as much in value as that parcel is.
Right, I understand that, but it's not really an even exchange. It's not land for land. It's land for a project. And, you know, again, this 0.1 acre parcel, what's gonna happen to that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, if appropriate, I'd like to invite our Anoka County planner, Karen Blaska, to the table to help answer some of these questions. She might have some more insights for us on this particular topic.
All right.
Thank you. My name is Karen Blaska. I'm the park planner for Anoka County. For that 0.1 of an acre parcel, the neighbor who is adjacent to it, who has been dealing with the trash and all that, is interested in securing that. I'm not sure if that is actually what will happen once it's released from the regional trail corridor, but it would be at the discretion of our Board of commissioners.
Good questions, Bob?
First of all, I have a comment. I was just being very pleased about the overall proposal, especially the equity analysis that you went through, thinking about the work we went into to develop that thinking and the planning, and how meaningful it seemed to be as part of this overall long-range plan. So I compliment you on the plan, and particularly I thought that equity analysis piece brought some insight that we haven't had much of in the past. Nice job.
We're typically pretty loose about this, though I will remind you that theoretically, commentary and discussion pieces should come after we have a motion on the table and start off with just like clarifications. But
Then I'll wait.
okay. Any other questions first? Dave?
Does seem like a good proposal. I was just wondering, you know, this is quite a string of properties here. And I just was trying to get a sense of like how much traffic, how much use did the trails actually get? Is there any sense of that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Yanks, I understand that the trail gets about 300,000 annual users or visitors, 300 annual visitors a year, so a pretty good number.
And do we, you know, maybe this is more of a question for the chair, but do we have like some kind of gauge on use and dollars appropriated, or is it just too hard to kind of have some kind of connection on that? I know every case is different, right?
Yeah, so in terms of dollars appropriated, I think it would be a little tricky to break down that on the per unit basis, because there are some things where we give money directly to a project for a particular thing, and some where there's money appropriated to the implementing agency, and they may or may not track for us how that gets allocated. It at least doesn't come through this body, whether staff has that kind of detail, that's possible. But some of those like operational maintenance things, I don't know how that would get broken down.
Chair and Commissioner Yakes, good question, interesting question. When I heard your question, I was thinking you're wondering about regional significance, like what makes a regional trail a regional trail?
Yeah, and just to clarify, I'm not trying to pick on any one project.
No.
Like my perspective is coming once a month and I hear these proposals for millions of dollars, and I'm trying to get some sense of the gauge of that. That's nothing to do with this, but I mean, I suppose I could dig into that, but I just was wondering if there's any way to kind of rate these in some mental capacity to make it, you know, make some sense of it.
I was just gonna comment that it's a good question, but we don't do like return on investment, like per visitor return. And one of the reasons is because we wanna support a range of experiences and opportunities out there. Some of our trails are so darn congested, like you gotta be, you know, like you gotta be willing to sort of put up with it. The Minnehaha Parkway on the weekend is just like a super highway, but then there's others that are like in between parks in western Hennepin County, and that's a much more kind of pastoral experience, quiet. It feels a lot different than some of the more urban Grand Rounds North, I'm thinking of. That's
Yeah.
So
And we have some like estimated count stuff from our visitor count data. The statistical validity of it gets worse and worse the more granular you try to break it down, so there's some wiggle room to that. But we can give some idea of that. But yeah, in terms of return on investment, it's tricky, especially because we also have things where we know depending on when we acquire land and where it costs wildly different amounts, and things like that. The one thing that I would like to see some of those kinds of numbers is in our equity grant program that we've done the last couple of years. I don't think we're gonna get it for all the money we spend across the board because, I mean, some of it because you can't calculate it and some of it because it doesn't really make sense to have that number. But because that's our one thing that's competitive and has a particular goal in mind, I would like to see if we can collect data for that. We're maybe just barely getting into long enough since the first allocation of that we might see results, but it is kind of a long-term thing. Yeah, in terms of these other ones,
Yeah, thanks for trying to wade in on that. I know there wasn't probably gonna be a clean answer no matter what.
yeah, I get where you're coming
That's a good
from.
question.
It's always if we're spending a bunch of money, or is there a reason for it, right? Yeah, you wanna check that. And we get big picture reasons, but not necessarily granular one.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Monica?
Pretty much just out of curiosity. The proposal to remove the 0.1 acre, is that one in segment 4, right? No.
Six.
Technically,
6, okay. So, and then as I understood, it's gonna take 10 to 15 years to finish the process of the launch range park. So, but are we gonna take that right away or we're gonna wait until we get to segment 6, you know? Because you start segment 1 tomorrow and then 15 years to start segment 6. So I just wanna know when are we gonna remove the acre?
I don't think we're doing the segment work in order like that.
Or
But-
maybe I mean.
But there is the question of, there's this other facility thing, when is that facility project slated? And does that line up with when the,
Because I thought the visitor house was
Yeah,
gonna start almost, the beginning, right? And then I'm assuming this one is gonna start sooner than whatever is the segment, so you can plan, but I don't know. It's just long range sometimes, although I understand it needs to be planned because it's a park and takes years to be, going on, it's sometimes like, yeah, it's not my problem anymore, 10 years from now.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dillenberg, I could start into this. The example that I provided for a project taking place in the near term was indeed in segment 1. But there are indeed also reconfiguring, a reconstruction and trail improvements happening throughout the trail
Okay, perfect.
corridor, segments 1 through 6, that will likely start on a near-term timeframe as well, but will also likely take quite a while because of the number of different projects occurring. But the project that is specific to segment 6 for the exchange, perhaps Karen could say a little bit more about the timing there.
The timing for that was actually out about 10 years.
Okay.
But priorities changed amongst our commissioners, and so it could occur earlier.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Our proposed action here has the approving the removal of that parcel effective immediately. How does that line up with making sure that then gets replaced with this facility potentially down the line?
Yeah, unless we wanted to adjust the location of the facility exchange and move that into, say, segment 4, which we're actually developing an RFP for design and engineering on that now. So we could kind of swap. It's somewhat separated from where the parcel is, but we could do that.
I guess maybe that's a question for council staff of when
Preference.
we say a facility exchange like that, how is that held accountable later administratively?
Chair, commissioners, we are in close contact with the park agencies on these. This is one that has had a lot of interest from the city of Fridley, and so they're really excited, I think, to see these ADA improvements that city and county have been working together. And so my hope is that if the removal goes forward, it would be within the same year period, just because it gets really hard to track. Like I remember the Washington County example at Cottage Grove Ravine where we had a removal when they put the Hero Center in and they actually took I don't know if it was 10 acres out of that park and and there was a commitment to do an equally valuable land exchange and it just took a lot longer. And so I think our lesson from that was that we should really, button down the replacement land to happen within a set period of time. So, good question.
So at this point, it's essentially council staff hound them about it for a while until it happens. It's not super formalized like the money from the sale comes and sits in a council account
Yeah,
held in
no.
trust or anything like that, which, would be the most formal way, but sounds like an accounting nightmare.
Yeah, there's some, I think, goodwill built up here, particularly between the council and Anoka County. I know that there's a lot of interest in seeing this happen, so Karen and I will be talking.
I'm not terrifically concerned about it happening, it's just, that's kind of an open-ended thing it's good for us to at least understand that that's how it works.
Mr. Chair, I would just add that, when it comes to equally valuable exchanges, we recognize that there's a preference for those exchanges occurring within the same unit, oftentimes in close proximity. And so, Anoka County proposed the exchange to be within the same segment. But as Karen just indicated, it could be a project that occurs, a similar project that would occur in segment 4, also within the same corridor, just a little bit further away, that would have the same types of outcomes occur, but likely on a nearer term timeframe.
Sure, that's great. Attractive to me. Other questions?
So, if anything changes, do you have to bring the project back here and we're gonna discuss this again and then you're gonna try to remind me what I asked?
As written currently, this just says for a trail reconstruction project of greater value. So as long as it meets that, it wouldn't have to be adjusted, it doesn't specify which bridge
I
it
kind of
is.
just hope that it's open enough that, because it's long, so I know things happen, so,
Yeah, so,
the easier can make change, so we don't wanna give you a nightmare.
right, yeah, our proposed action describes a category, not a particular project.
Okay.
Other questions? I have some about land ownership and control things. First, with this JPA that you said was replaced by an easement to the county, I'm assuming those easements are perpetual. And then there's this bit saying that the county has a limited use agreement with the railroad. What is a limited use agreement and how is it different from an easement?
Mr. Chair, a limited use permit with the railroad allows us to have the trail on their property, so it's similar to an easement. They just don't call it that. They don't want us to have actual rights to the property, but they allow us to use it. And this is their way of doing that.
And I'm guessing that is not guaranteed to be perpetual?
You know what, I would have to review that, but I believe it's for 100 years or so.
So it's not perpetual, but it's close.
Correct.
Okay. And certainly long enough for our policies about funding, which I think is only 10 years, right? So, okay. So at this point then, there aren't any segments where we're concerned about corridor control anymore. Okay. There's a note also on page 8 saying the Fridley Parks Commission had concerns about the trail being better maintained to allow for water recreation. Can you elaborate on what the issue is currently in that respect?
Sure, Mr. Chair. We worked with the city of Fridley and Ramsey County a while ago to establish a Rice Creek water trail. And that is what that is in reference to. So, at one point, we had, designated a water trail to go from Long Lake to the Mississippi River. Because of the water flows downed trees and private properties, we have a hard time accessing it, to maintain it as a safe water trail.
Oh, okay, so they're talking about maintenance actually in the water.
In the water, yes, yes, and yes. In order to take trees, you have to have a certified water tree removal team, and they are few and far between. So our risk department said, no, stop.
Okay, that concern I definitely understand because
Yes.
I once wrapped a canoe around a tree on that segment. Where it was expensive to fix.
Yes, yes.
All right, any other questions or motions?
I can make a motion to all those
Okay.
things that you need.
We have a motion for the proposed action from the staff report. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Bob, thank you. So that motion then is that the Metropolitan Council, 1, approve Anoka County's Rice Creek West Regional Trail Long Range Plan. 2, approve the removal of a 0.1 acre non-contiguous parcel of land within Rice Creek West Regional Trail Corridor in exchange for a trail reconstruction project of greater value that will meet or exceed Americans with Disabilities Act standards within the regional trail corridor. 3, require Anoka County prior to initiating any construction to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services Interceptor Engineering Assistant Manager. 4, advise Anoka County to coordinate planning and work with Metro Transit and the Minnesota Department of Transportation to improve crossing safety at the 69th Street intersection before committing to a tunnel at this location. And 5, advise Anoka County to consider implementing the recommendations for solar and transportation in the advisory comments section of the business item. Is there further discussion on that? I will say I echo some of Cecily's concerns. You've heard me say before, I'm not a huge fan of the land for facility of exchange concept. It is, however, allowed by our current policy, and if you are going to do one, this is probably some of the least offensive way for me because it doesn't have a council restrictive covenant on it, and there's the logistical challenge of even doing a land for land exchange with it, so like I'm not particularly concerned about it, I just don't like the idea generally. I know Cecily is in the same boat. But if that's something we wanted to change, that would be something to change in the policy plan, which we have not done to date. Anything else? Okay. Hearing nothing else, we can go ahead and vote on that motion as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That motion carries and that plan is approved. Thank you. Or rather, recommended for approval, not final. That brings us to a second business item, which is a long-range plan for Como Regional Park in St. Paul. And anybody that's new here, you're gonna get exposure to a lot of complicated things, because this might be our weirdest park in the system. Go ahead, Kevin.
Great, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and Council member. Today, I will be bringing forth the Como Regional Park Long Range Plan from the City of St. Paul, and behind me, I am also joined by the City of St. Paul's Parks and Recreation staff, so hopefully after the presentation, they'll be able to help us answer any questions that you might have. Also, this is a quick PSA for the swan boats. The season is ending soon, but they are still available to rent, so that's just a quick note out there. So moving on to the Como Regional Park Long Range Plan. Como Regional Park is located pretty centrally in our regional parks and trails system in the city of St. Paul. Within the city, it's located in the northwest corner and is kind of tucked into the Como neighborhood. And alongside that, the 460-acre park surrounds Como Lake. And in addition to that, it is also intersected by the Grand Round North Regional Trail, as well as the Lexington Avenue Parkway Trail Search Corridor. Something else that is unique to note, as Chair Russo had mentioned, was that within Como Regional Park, there are 2 special recreation features embedded within it, and that is the Como Zoo and the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory. This specific long-range plan will mostly just be focusing on the Como Regional Park component and will not be including any items regarding the zoo or the conservatory. So the focus of this long-range plan is to essentially identify new opportunities within the park and to prioritize future projects. Some of the things that they are planning to kind of improve in the future is to clarify wayfinding and for pedestrians and cyclists, improving safety and accessibility for all park visitors, enhancing the lake's water quality, and promoting equity throughout the park. I'd also like to make a quick note that the images in the previous slide are figures 1 through 3 in your business item. Moving on to the equity analysis, the City of St. Paul had conducted an analysis on their long-range planning process to ensure that they're including underserved communities, and they mainly prioritized future users and local community members in the nearby surrounding area. And some of this is due to the projected Met Council projections at the time, which anticipated that St. Paul would grow by about 30,000 residents, and in the future, by around 2040, they would be reaching about, the region would be reaching about 40% BIPOC populations. So that's why they wanted to prioritize engaging with future users, and this was done through engaging with youth visitors through focus groups done with the St. Paul Youth Commission and students of the Metro Deaf School, Como High School, and the Hmong College Prep Academy. In addition to engaging with youth visitors, they also reached out to local community groups by doing pop-up events at local events for the District 10 Como neighborhood, as well as holding an open house. So some of the advice that was shaped in these focus groups was ultimately compiled afterwards, and then after compiling and listing all of these proposed projects, the City of St. Paul had revisited these stakeholder groups to then prioritize what was the most important to them. And generally, the top 5 priorities that were identified by stakeholders was to improve safety and ADA accessibility at trail crossings, to plant and maintain trees for added shade and more native plantings to kind of restore native habitats, to increase pedestrian lighting for safety, to add additional furnishings to trails throughout the park, such as benches, bike parking, drinking fountains, and temporary restroom facilities, to consolidate the trail system by removing redundancies and to resurface and widen paths to improve capacity throughout the park, as well as improving accessibility to the lakeshore and the pavilion and to other areas throughout Como Park. And then the last thing was to also consider the closure of East Como Lake Drive to improve the water quality and bike and pedestrian safety. Moving on to partner engagement, the 2 groups that the City of St. Paul has primarily engaged with was the city itself and other departments, and the Capital Region Watershed District. So the first one, engaging with the different departments of the City of St. Paul, was done through convening a technical advisory committee that consisted of city staff from different departments such as Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and Community Planning and Economic Development. And this group met 2 times to ultimately decide to suggest proposals for the long-range plan, as well as provide any feedback and assistance to the project team. And in addition to that, the City of St. Paul also engaged with the Capital Region Watershed District, which is a key partner for Como Regional Park, as they both collaborate on improving the water quality within Como Lake. And this has been done through repeated engagement and the creation of different watershed management plans specifically for the lake. And through this engagement, some of the themes from partner engagement were to improve and update wayfinding, explore adding amenities like a potential dog park or more restrooms throughout the park, discussing the potential location for a Capital Region Watershed District stormwater project, improving trail connectivity within and adjacent to the park to connect to local neighborhoods, and exploring the idea of closing East Como Lake Drive and the potential benefits and drawbacks that would come with that specific action. So these specific partners were very supportive of the proposals in the long-range plan, and their comments were ultimately incorporated into the document. Recently, they had received letters of support from the Capital Region Watershed District, from the local neighborhood council called District 10, and they also received a letter of support from the Metro Deaf School, kind of being grateful for being involved and engaged in the process. In addition to working with partners and underserved communities, the City of St. Paul also worked to engage the general public, especially local communities. And this was done through local pop-up events with local community members. They also convened a design advisory committee, which comprised of 15 members from the local area, who then provided some feedback and were kind of convened to provide thoughts on what the community's needs would be for Como Regional Park. And then in addition to that, they also hosted an online engagement platform. And this was done, this offered multiple different avenues for participants to engage, such as a map of Como Regional Park where people could place pins and add comments as to what they hope to see in the future. They could post on a virtual idea board any comments that they had. And there was also the option to just fill out a survey and prioritize any of the listed projects that were being proposed for the park. In addition to this engagement platform, the project team also went back and re-engaged online by releasing their 90% draft of this plan and allowing people to fill out a survey to provide further comment. Some of the public engagement themes that resulted was to improve trail wayfinding and signage, to improve access and circulation throughout the park and connect to local neighborhoods, add amenities and explore new recreational offerings, to consider the closure of East Como Lake Drive, and to better understand the indigenous history and significance of the land at Como Regional Park, and to work with local groups to work on interpreting that. So this brings us to the development concept, which has a timeline of at least 20 years for implementation. The figure that you see on the left-hand side is also seen as figure 4 within your business item. And these ideas and proposals are essentially sourced from that engagement effort, and they were categorized into 3 different categories, which each had a different prioritization schedule. So as you can see on the slide, things with a high priority are planned to be implemented within 10 years, a medium priority 10 to 15 years, and then low priority 15 to 20 years. So some of the general things that are being proposed for Como Regional Park is to improve trail accessibility and connectivity throughout the entire park. An example of that is introducing two-way bicycle traffic around Como Lake. There's also the idea to explore the balance of creating unprogrammed spaces throughout the park while also considering adding new amenities or activities such as disc golf or a potential dog park in the area. There's also an emphasis on planting trees and adding native plantings just to increase and restore habitat restoration around the lake and around the park. And then some other key features would be to improve the water quality of Como Lake, which we'll get to in a minute or so. And that is done through partnering with the Capital Region Watershed District to create and collaborate on stormwater best management practices to prevent runoff going into the lake. And then some other key upgrades would be to update the area around the lakeside pavilion to make it more accessible and provide access to the lake shore. One thing I wanted to note about the lakeside pavilion specifically, just because we've gotten some public comments about it, is that the building itself and the design is still being determined in a separate document that's called the Lakeside Vision Plan. Currently in this long-range plan, it's just suggesting improvements for the areas surrounding the building itself. But for further details in regards to the scope of the building, the cost and the timeline of those improvements specifically, that will be determined at a future date, and engagement for that will be determined later on by the City of St. Paul. Lastly, the other key improvement that you've probably been hearing about in the engagement findings is the exploration of closing East Como Lake Drive, which is located on the east side of the lake. And that is simply currently just a proposal to explore it. This still requires further traffic studies and analysis to determine the potential benefits and drawbacks of closing that street and expanding the shoreline and the trail areas. Moving on to Como Lake, one of the key features of this regional park is the lake itself. In fact, it's listed on the Metropolitan Council's priority waters list, which places extra emphasis on bodies of water that are significant in the Twin Cities region. And this one is particularly important due to its recreational and tourism value to the Twin Cities. So historically, Como Lake has had poor water quality due to high phosphorus runoff, and this has resulted in algal blooms, which then creates poor ecosystem health within Como Lake. So in this plan, the City of St. Paul and the Capital Region Watershed District are working together and continuing to partner to work on improving the water quality through restoring the shorelines around the lake, continuing to monitor the water quality, and to also consider the installation of several stormwater best management practices. And one such project that was listed in the plan was to potentially install a new sand filter and a bioretention basin in the northwestern golf course pond to remove any additional phosphorus before it leaves that body of water. So the cost for implementing this plan is, it ranges from $57.9 million on the low end to $96.4 million on the high end, with an anticipated annual project cost of approximately $65,000. The only acquisition that was mentioned in the long-range plan is a 2.87 acre parcel that is along the southwestern border of Como Regional Park. This is part of a 10-acre parcel that is currently owned by BNSF as an active railway. But the intention for this parcel would be to provide for additional parking opportunities during programming events or any special events that are occurring, such as the annual Hmong Freedom Festival. So that's what the acquisition cost would be at around $421,000, $421,603. Lastly, the operations and maintenance annual cost is estimated to be approximately $1.45 million annually. That also includes things like building improvements, general maintenance, and natural area restoration. So moving on, the rationale for this proposed action is that the regional park is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, specifically Chapter 5, Planning and Strategy 1, as well as other council policies. And the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council approve the Como Regional Park Long Range Plan, that They advised the City of St. Paul to consider implementing the recommendations for solar resources and population forecasts in the advisory comments section of the business item, and to require the City of St. Paul, prior to initiating any new development of the regional park, to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council's Environmental Services Interceptor Engineering Assistant Manager. I'll now stand for questions, and I'll also invite the City of St. Paul to answer any questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to start off with, you mentioned the special features exclusion. Could you also briefly touch on the kind of concepts and policy and formula implications of the sports field and enterprise facility designations within this park? Or make Emmett do it if you want.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer to Emmett.
All right, excellent question, Chair Russo. I just wanted to point out that this is Kevin's first regional park plan, and to give him Como is some sort of a little bit of a.
It's mean is what it
It's
is.
mean. That's just what I'm like, that's the cards that were dealt, Kevin. No, Kevin took it on because he's capable. The question about the athletic fields, I know there are a number of athletic fields associated with Como, and those are considered part of the local amenities that don't receive regional funding, and that's a long-standing agreement. Those fields, I think, probably existed long before the regional parks did, which, by the way, we're in the 50th year, Sue, working on the birthday celebration. But so that those are just excluded, so they will be. I think there was something in there about enterprise facilities, was that right? Okay. I know that some of the enterprise facilities, like they have rental equipment and stuff like that. Is that the swan boats, or what?
There's some of that. The golf course falls
Yeah,
under
golf
that.
course, yeah.
And then there's also, I don't know if this is actually technically part of the zoo or something, but I know there's a mini golf course and some other things like that.
Como's got it all, as we said earlier. Those activities aren't eligible for regional funding again. I mean, the golf course is excluded during the golfing season, but is a really vibrant and vital place of the regional system in the wintertime. I'm not sure I nailed it all.
So some of these things, are in the park boundary when we show just a big boundary on a map.
Yeah.
But for anything where we consider the park, they're imagined to not be. And that includes when we're calculating acreage for some of these formulas for fund distribution, some of those areas don't count. The sports fields are excluded entirely. The like mini golf thing would be excluded entirely. The golf course situation is interesting. I think we just do that as 50-50. It's half excluded in terms of formula because the winter uses of golf courses are typically cross-country skiing, and that is considered an eligible use. So we consider half the year is covered and the other half not. But that is still like in boundary because of that half use. And my follow-up to that piece is because it's still in boundary, that makes it so that these stormwater management ponds within the golf course area would be eligible for regional funding because they're not actually about the golf, right?
I would say those are similar to like Hiawatha Golf Course. There's a lot of ponds for water quality purposes, and those would be eligible for regional funding, so yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought, just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so you'll see some things when we dive into some of the formula stuff about these exclusions for enterprise facilities, which basically means something that brings in income such that we think that it should be essentially self-sustaining. Golf courses are the typical example of that, but there are other things as well.
Highland Hills.
And in terms of sports fields, that's something where we've gotten kind of strange over the years because we say basically the like organized sports stuff is excluded, so like a baseball field, a soccer field, but areas that are more informal pickup game, where it's just like open grass that people could use multiple ways, that is eligible. It's been a weird gray area for us. I don't have good answers on that. But you'll see that kind of stuff if you dive into our policy plan, and if you wanted to see examples of all of them, Como has them.
Right, well, you know, that was going to be one of my questions as well, because when I look at figure 4-21, you know, the special recreation features are called out, and I get it, the Zoo and Conservancy. Enterprise facilities are described as Como Golf Course and McMurray Fields, but what about the other ball fields? The green area?
I think that green area is probably falling under that other category of the like less structured open space, as I recall. We'll get there. This bit?
If it's a baseball field, it would be excluded, Cecily, and not part of the,
Because every time I've been there, there's been like organized sports play there. Because again, I was wondering about how much of the park really is regional park in nature. You know, once you carve out everything else, is it really just this pale green in the lake?
Chair, Cecily, Commissioners, I think that the pale green is the heart of the park, but I don't want to suggest that like the golf course is a really vital part during the winter time.
This picnic grounds
The picnic
area
grounds
is
too, yeah.
definitely as
Yeah,
well.
well, I get picnic ground as a regional park, but then in our, let me find what page it was on.
And I think
That's-
On
This-
page 9, the discussion of the development concept. I understand restrooms and drinking fountains and winter activities being part of a regional park, but is disc golf, a bicycle pump track, or a dog park a regional park type of amenity? I don't know.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, I'd like to mention that these are currently kind of just ideas or potential proposals in the long-range plan. As for whether or not it's considered a local or regional amenity, I know one example is I think Riverfront Regional Park has a disc golf course, so I think sometimes it's a case-by-case basis.
It's a context-sensitive determination. We've approved disc courses, we've approved pump tracks, we've approved dog parks as part of regional parks and even trails. And I think that as we move to the 2050 plan, I think there's an interest in creating more flexibility to But I do think that the nature-based quality of our system is something that we do want to sustain. So like if there's a pump track, like I would wanna know how are they addressing things like stormwater management and ensuring that that isn't like reducing the lake quality or other things. So, a good question, Cecily.
And that, yeah, that's definitely a section of the policy plan that has significant changes in it in the current draft. So if you have thoughts about how to make that better defined, go submit them in the public comment
No, I
forms.
mean, those are great amenities in a park in an urban area, I agree. And due to its size, this is a regional park, but, you know, looking at Rice Creek, you know, earlier, you know, that, you know, maybe 50 years from now will be as heavily used and developed and, I don't know.
Good question.
Bob, then Amanda?
Okay, Mr. Chair, and you know, one of the questions I had, because I couldn't find it. I'm not quite sure how you're gonna answer this question, but what is the approximate acreage of the park and Lake Como? Question number one. Number two, what's the length of trails that we have in the Como Park Reserve?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, I'd like to invite City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation staff. I know the total administrative acreage is approximately 460 acres, but that's about most of the information I have, and we'll see how much trail mileage we have.
We're all coming up.
We lost one.
Oh, we have a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Alice Messer. I'm sorry, I'm a landscape architect and manage the design and construction group. I'm joined with Dave Ronzani, Ann Gardner, and Katie Hammerlink, who all have been working extremely hard on this plan. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. As you read, Como is one of the most heavily used regional parks in the system. There is a lot there. It's really exciting to think about everything that was changed in the 1984 version of the long-range plan and then what we're thinking to for the future. So your question about acreage, I'm gonna turn that over to Dave and Katie. And I don't know if we have an answer on the trail mileage, but we could get back to you. There are a number of trails that have different sizes, different purposes. One of the goals of the long-range plan is to consolidate that and improve wayfinding. So we may have to circle back on the trail mileage,
Alright.
but around Como Lake is about a mile and a half, if you use that as a guide. But Dave, do you happen to know the acreage of the park?
So when you mention the acreage of the park, it does get confusing because we have so many different.
Can you speak up, please?
I'm sorry. When you talk about acreage of the park, it does get kind of confusing because we have the administrative boundaries and we have like just different boundaries. So I could get you more concrete numbers on that, but like Alice said, like in terms of the trails, I don't know if we have a definite number in terms of mileage, but including the about 1.3 miles around the lake, I think the total trails around the lake is just over 2.
And roughly, how many acres of lake do you have? Do you have any idea? How big is the lake?
I believe it's in the plan somewhere, but I would have to,
I could find that.
offhand, I don't have it.
All right, thank you.
160. No, that's not yes.
I think it's close to 100 acres, but we'll follow up. Sorry, we're
That's-
ready for specific questions.
Well, That's fine.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I just Googled and it says, if this is correct, Wikipedia says that Como Lake is a 70.5 acre lake. That's up to 15.5 feet deep.
seems plausible.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the DNR says 71.3 acres. So somewhere in that 70-ish range. Amanda?
Yeah, and my question is for the city, so you can stay up. So I've heard Director Rodriguez talk a lot about the challenges with copper wire theft, and I saw that, a lot of this is improved lighting and, 100% totally support that. But, are there strategies moving forward in terms of, just because I've also heard the city council, Como Lake has been a hot spot for the theft, and just kind of like what are the plans to ensure that the lighting is adequate?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I'll take that question. So I will say there's no great solution. The city has probably tried literally 30 different options. Como is a spot where it's recurring wire theft. What we are doing as we put in new light fixtures, we have a new standard where the connection box, instead of being at the bottom, is up in the air. It's about 8 feet up in the air, so it takes a lot more effort if you wanna go up and pull that wire. So that's a change that we're doing across the system. We are also exploring solar. That comes up a lot. I will say, the technology isn't quite there for what we would expect in our regional parks as we think about parking lots or trails. They require different lighting. We also, in most cases, have a really mature tree canopy, which is really important. So we're exploring it, but we haven't found the perfect solution.
No, and I know they've been working very hard on it. I was
Yeah.
just curious, thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sue.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and this is for both St. Paul and for Anoka County. The history with these two projects, the history of the land is just fascinating. I Googled before the meeting and I've been Googling during the meeting. I hope that as you're working on this, that you really emphasize the history. The history of Como Park includes it having been a good portion of it was a correctional facility at one time. And an attorney later determined that that was illegal. But in the meantime, folks who were incarcerated in the correctional facility helped develop the park. So there was a benefit there in terms of the development. And I personally find that really interesting, but I think it's important for future generations to know the 1800s, the 1900s, what happened in terms of these parks. They didn't just pop up out of nowhere. And for a lot of folks, there's a lot of personal history. I remember as a kid coming up in my parents' station wagon, unair conditioned by the way, in the dead of summer to go to Como Park, and it was always such a big deal. And just now I'm learning the history of it. And if I could, Mr. Chair, I want to make one other point. The St. Paul Parks have benefited a great deal from a nonprofit organization called Friends with St. Paul Parks and Trails. And one of the founders of that organization, Peggy Lynch, died a little over 2 weeks ago. She was an amazing woman who did a lot for parks, not just in St. Paul, but region and statewide. She was just an amazing woman. I had the privilege of getting to know her about 25 years ago as our family was gifting and dedicating a lot of trees in the Lake Phelan area. And I encourage every unit in the regional park system to consider how to really celebrate those nonprofits that help preserve those parks and do what we can to really reinforce the importance of those volunteer and efforts, both in terms of time and money. So just wanted to make that point. Peggy was a remarkable woman. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else or motions?
I can make a motion to approve what you want.
Okay, we have a motion for the proposed action from the staff report. Is there a second? Second from Amanda. Okay, so that motion is that the Metropolitan Council approve the Como Regional Park Long Range Plan, advise the City of St. Paul to consider implementing the recommendations for solar resources and population forecasts in the advisory comments section of the business item, and require the City of St. Paul, prior to initiating any new development of the regional park, to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council's Environmental Services Interceptor Engineering Assistant Manager. Discussion on that motion. I had a question of, this doesn't appear, as far as I can tell, in our business item, but maybe it does in the overall plan. There's some coverage about like circulation and access things, and I know for several years, the city has had a shuttle bus service within this park from some off-site parking. Is that described in the plan at all? And how does that fit into the other kind of things you're talking about for circulation?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there is a shuttle that serves the Como Zoo Conservatory.
Oh, so
it
that-
serves the special recreation.
So it's
feature.
covered by the plans for those rather than this one? Okay. Anything else?
I just hope you find a way to solve the parking problem, but I don't even wanna thought, yeah. It's a very busy park, so.
Other comments? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries, this is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
That will bring us on to the information item for the day, which is a draft fishing pier grant program notice of fund availability. With Jessica to present. This is, again, something kind of unusual because it's a new thing from the legislature.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Lee, for the record, planning and home city council. And today I'm going to present the draft notice of funding availability for the new fishing piers program. So first, some background. The 2024 legislative session appropriated $500,000 for new fishing piers on lakes in the Metropolitan Park system to increase fishing opportunities. So this money has to be for new fishing piers only where there currently aren't any. It is a one-time appropriation and funds must be spent by June 30th of 2026. So we don't have a whole lot of time to use this money, so we're trying to keep it as simple as we can. And fortunately, the legislation requires the council to solicit applications, but does not require a competitive grant review process. And so we looked at different ways to possibly have this program. And we'll save significant time by not having the competitive review technical team like we do with the equity grant program, for example. So we started with some research. First, I reached out to the DNR. They have fishing piers that they regularly purchase, and they range for about $40,000 to $50,000, and they're pretty basic. And so then we met with the implementing agencies to see what kind of fishing piers they typically would have in their parks, because we want our fishing piers to be of regional park quality. And they said for like a really good regional park fishing pier project, it would cost somewhere in the $100,000 to $175,000 range. So that would include not just the pier itself, but also allowing the custom build on the shoreline, add accessibility features, etc. And so when we met with them, we talked about the possibility of, rather than having a competitive program, just having a set amount of grants at a set amount of money. And so we determined that $125,000 would be a good amount for a high quality fishing pier, and that would allow us to have 4 projects with this funding. And so we decided that was the way we all wanted to go. So each agency is allowed to submit 1 application. We'll review them for eligibility and make sure we work with agencies so that everyone can get at least one application in the pot. And then we're gonna propose having a drawing at an MPOS meeting. The plan is for February at this point, could change. And where we'll randomly select 4 of those eligible projects, and then they'll each be funded at $125,000. And then if the project is more than that, the agency would be responsible for the difference. And as part of the NOFA, which I'll bring, the formal NOFA I'll bring next month, we'll build language into that so that those grants can be awarded right away, so we don't have to come back through the council for that awarding process to speed up the timeline. So here's our list of eligibility criteria. Must be a new fishing pier. The proposal must demonstrate a need very clearly, how it will increase fishing opportunities. We added a couple things that wasn't necessarily in the legislation that is important to the council. One is addressing an equity focus area, age, race, ethnicity, income, national origin, or ability, and demonstrating how a fishing pier will contribute to additional programming opportunities and awareness building for the regional park system. And of course, projects must be shovel ready so that they can be completed by June 30th, 2026, and they must be consistent with a council approved long range plan. And so our next steps, like I said, in October, we'll bring the NOFA through, and then we'll open the application and web grants right away, and it'll be open for about 2.5 months. We'll review the projects, we'll bring the eligible list to the February MPOS meeting, have a public drawing, and then get those grant agreements set out right away. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Amanda?
Yeah, I really appreciate the legwork and the idea of just, having set amounts and, that you figured this out. I am a little concerned about like drawing. I'm worried about the legislative reaction to that, to be honest, in terms of feedback. And just a question, like if the projects were brought here, I would assume there would be an initial staff level review to make sure they meet all of those eligibility requirements, just so there weren't any, if we did draw, that there wouldn't be any egg in our face to be like, oh, you awarded a project that didn't even,
Yeah, so the idea would be that staff would review ahead of time so that anything in the hat was already verified as meeting eligibility.
If I can I add to that is as one of the unluckiest persons when drawings happen, really, I'll be very concerned that you have this big application and they have to go to all this requirement and it's gonna take hours of work to them just to put it in, a little pen, somebody just pick it up and say, yeah, well, thanks for nothing. I don't know how fair that sounds to me. I don't know if it will be easier, first come, first basis, or even if it's like a grading, I think that's given a little more depth than just, well, yeah, bad for you, good for me, kind of. But that's, because I really have no luck.
Chair, is it okay if I respond?
Yeah, otherwise I would go into.
So we talked about this a lot with the agencies too, and we decided that it would be very hard to have a competitive process to determine which fishing pier is better than another. So they're gonna be so similar, and all 10 agencies are gonna have substantial need for this. And to initiate a review process like that, to put together a technical review team and the hours of reviewing them in the meetings, it adds probably 6 months to the process. So then we start to run out of time to actually use the funds. And anyone who's served on the equity grant team knows that commitment is real. And so to put that kind of review process in, to review all 10, then to only be able to fund 2 to 4, give or take, it's hard to say. We didn't think that was the best use of the funds. The agencies were in support of this idea of a random drawing. We're obviously open to feedback, but at this point, we don't have a lot of time, so we're not sure how else. And we consider first come, first served, but that doesn't work very well with 10 agencies either.
It essentially prioritizes the best staffed agency. Yeah.
Chair, excuse me.
I'll just add something, then I'll copy you. And in terms of the equity grant programming, there's the time for the actual review bit, but I'm thinking like the first year we did it, even figuring out our rubric and grading scale thing, I think that probably took almost a full year. So yeah, it's.
And we started with that, like initially I had a rubric and we were working on it, like how are we gonna score these? And we realized it's almost impossible, they're in the same project, it's just different locations. So then you're really just saying what locations are more important. And we tried to come up with the criteria for that as well, like population and use, and it just got way too big for $500,000.
I might suggest that it might be a good long-term goal for us to try to figure out how to write some guiding policy for unexpected kinds of money that doesn't fit within our existing policy plan, so that if we get things like this in the future, maybe we have a little bit more to start from. But for this one, we're kind of blindsided by it and going, well, how do we deal with that? I see many hands, but I'm gonna start with Emmett, if he still wants to say anything.
Chair, this is, I think it was a great action by the state legislature to give us $500,000, but with 10 agencies in the scope of the regional park system, it doesn't go that far. Like that's just, and so we are incredibly grateful for it, but that's just the reality of allocating that amount of money, and it is random, like the idea of a like I want to bring a wheel that we could spin, but like who wins? It is chance, but we would ensure that every project that was put forward, is meeting the requirements, that is meeting the need and is new and is, so like we would have all that lined up, but it was a challenge to try to make this efficient and meaningful and meet the spirit of the legislation.
Sure, we'll start with Sue, then Cecily.
I just wanted to suggest the possibility that it might be a good idea to touch base with Judd, just to make sure he's on board with this.
Okay.
And he may wanna talk to the authors, just to kind of give them a heads up so that no one's taken by surprise. I think that this is well thought out, and I think it, reflects the challenge of the timing and will work fine. One, not related to eligibility or the selection process, but one concern that I have about fishing piers is making sure that those people who use them know about the water's quality. And if there are PFAS or other chemicals in the water, that they know not to eat the fish. It's a big concern, particularly in the East Metro area, but as we're learning, those chemicals, including the PFAS, are showing up all over the place. So I think it would be real important for us to just make sure that safeguarding people's health is considered.
I can tell you that details about all the eating advisory stuff is maintained in a database by the State Department of Health that's online. I'm not sure what the usual practice is for posting that at peers or something, but that would probably be a good idea for ones that are. In terms of Judd, I'm assuming that's legal counsel?
Legislative or lobbyists.
A lobbyist, okay, so related, okay. Cecily.
Well, great job putting something together, but I do agree it's pretty lame. $500,000, what are they thinking? Are other agencies like DNR getting a chunk of money for new fishing piers, or Greater Minnesota getting a chunk of money?
Gift horse, Cecily, gift horse.
I think it's lame, but, and I don't have an issue at all with the drawing, because it is a crapshoot when you submit a grant application. 40% will be happy, 4 out of 10 will be happy in this. They're all gonna have a project for a fishing pier. The one question I had is, I think in your list of bullets, it needed to be consistent with a long-range plan. Well, how many agencies have a long-range plan that has an unfunded, undeveloped fishing pier? Are there a lot of them out there that have a lake or a stream or a creek or something, that has a little drawing for, fishing pier to be placed here someday?
All I can say is that when I presented this to the partners, nobody responded to that part of it.
Okay,
So I don't
well,
think
maybe
it's a
everybody's
concern.
got one then.
I think they have them, and they also have plans that have some narrative that say we want to ensure access to opportunities such as fishing, and so it can be a relatively, it doesn't have to be, fill in this blank and this blank.
Well, that's good. I just worried that, by the time the staff are starting to put these applications together, they realize, oh my God, we need to alter the master plan to make this happen. We only have 3 years to get this done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we have varying levels of detail in our long-range plans. Like, some of them have specifically said fishing pier here, but
Okay,
some of them are more like better access to water resources. So that could be
well, that's
different.
great.
Amanda.
I'll just follow up and say that, I'd still be a lot more comfortable with a first come, first served basis. That's a way that the legislature has kind of dealt with. They've put small pots of money in a lot of things, like, for example, the e-bike, rebate program. That was a pot of money and people applied, and I won't comment on the website crashing, but it did. That was
But this is a population of 10.
right.
It's a
No.
known,
No, but I'm just saying a way that you could deal with, like the only, the best staff or like the most well-funded staff is to give a longer runway of the notice of we're going to open a grant, further in the future so folks could do the legwork to decide if they have that and then have the grant period later on. And then provide communication when you've got your 4, so people aren't wasting time. Cause I agree with you, like, it's a lot of work to put together one of these applications, that it's a small chunk of money, and I don't know,
I
that's
feel
just my thought.
if you do it like this, it feels like, well, now that 10 of you have homework, do the application and send it up. If it's fair come fair basis and you're like, it's just so little, it doesn't matter, I'm not gonna even try, so I see that they might just not say. But if it's gonna be a draw, I would just please ask you to make a very easy application for anyone who wanted to do it.
I've made it as simple as possible.
Good.
Shouldn't be more than.
And I'm sure it's great, I like it, but it's just, I don't know.
I wasn't entirely sure what you were saying there, Amanda. Were you suggesting more along the lines of like choosing the agencies and then having them write a plan?
No, I'm saying like we put the notice of the proposed grant and like give people 3 months to think about whether or not they wanna apply, open the grant period, and then once we get the 4 acceptable applications, then we notify everyone else, like, the money's gone. You can quit working on this in the event that you were.
Oh, so have it more as a like
Rolling.
everybody's sitting there at their computer at the opening time
Yep.
to submit their stuff.
Yep.
Like buying concert tickets kind of a
That's what I
thing.
was
Yep.
thinking, concert.
I don't think
Yes,
that
it's
prevents
the
anyone-
Taylor Swift method of.
I don't think that would prevent anyone from wasting time because within like 5 minutes, they'd all be in. I mean, everyone, I suspect that the boards will say, there's money available, you have to apply.
Right.
And so nobody's gonna choose not to apply unless they honestly don't have a fishing pier. So I don't think, I mean, I understand what you're saying, I'm not sure how it would work with just 10.
But I think also the important point here is we have talked about this with the implementing agencies and they seem to think this was okay. They were fine with preparing the
They
plan.
liked it.
I'd see nodding heads.
Yeah.
Amanda, I wanted to be clear, because one thing Jessica and I have talked about is that she's making this application as simple as possible so that the time agencies will need to spend to do a thorough job will not be as.
It's not ours.
It's not ours.
Okay, I mean, that's some comfort.
It's not like our equity grant program
No.
applications.
It's ours.
I would still, I think Sue's suggestion is very good to have Judd go back and speak
talk
to the legislature. Just cause I wouldn't want this becoming a news story.
And tell them it's lame.
Bob, yes.
My first thought is, this is a refreshing change in terms of how to get something done. And I compliment you and the Met Council for having figured out a way to get at this quickly and without a lot of paperwork and a lot of strumming, all that stuff. Second question I have, just sort of a substantive question. Sort of the one criteria you've got up there is shovel ready. What does that mean to you? I mean, how are you gonna figure out whether or not they're shovel ready?
It's not necessarily something that I will verify, it's just the idea that they need to have their board on board, they need to have a plan so that they can initiate within, a few months of getting the grant so that these projects can be done. And I think that it's been pretty clear with all the agencies when this funding expires and that there are no extensions possible. And so I guess we're saying like, we're not gonna give you a grant and then now go amend your long range plan and talk about where you want the fishing pier. It's more like, we have a plan, we want this fishing pier here, the board's ready to go.
Okay,
I mean, it's
so if they have a
good
plan
faith.
for the, they're not just asking you for the money, then they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Anyhow, my compliments, I think it's a good idea.
Since this construction involves disturbing shoreline, does this trigger environmental reviews and approval from the DNR? And if so, what is the timeline for that?
That's a great question, that's something we rely on the agencies to handle, we don't do that for them, but. Sorry, the sun is blinking.
I know.
We do have one agency here, perhaps should be willing to.
Two agencies.
Oh, two, I'm sorry, Jonathan. I don't know.
Is that a problem, or are you able to fit that in?
Honestly, I think they, Right, yes. There will be some hoops to jump through, but I think once we can assure them that there'll be minimal impacts to the shoreline, that they will be fine with it.
I just want to point out to Jessica, in terms of your timeline here, it doesn't specifically say this, but at this February meeting, we should have boilerplate business item for the actual grant where we fill in who the recipients are.
So our plan is to have language in the business item approving the NOFA next month. That will say, like, and authorize the awarding of the 4 grants that are chosen at the drawing.
Okay.
We think that'll work. They've done that before for other small grants in community development.
Yeah, as long as it lays out all of the steps that are going to happen, that's probably fine. Okay. David?
Could I just ask about the, in your list of criteria, the must address one or more equity focus areas. How do you do that in terms of a peer?
And we've certainly seen that in some other places where there are some spots where we know that there's a particular racial minority that does a lot of fishing in an area and has had trouble accessing the shoreline from there. There's some where it's a matter of accessibility to disabilities, where the shoreline itself is not going to be wheelchair or walker accessible, and a pier with an approach can be. There are some where it's just about location in terms of picking like a nearby neighborhood that it serves in particular and what the demographics are there. So it kind of depends on what the particular project is, but we have seen each of those 3 kinds of things
So it
come
may
forward.
adjust depending on what the specifics, so that
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, then secondly, I just, I heard the comment about floating versus a, how was this worded? A regional quality pier or what, something that befits the quality of a regional amendment to a park. And, I just know, having grown up on a lake and I know a little bit about ice shoves, I'm just commenting that I'm hoping that it somehow factors into the design, because it'd be a shame to spend this money and just have the wind, shove the ice into it and wreck it. So just comment.
I don't know if I've ever heard of a fishing pier getting ruined by an ice shove. Karen says it has happened. I have not.
George.
Okay. I'm like, yeah, that would be a problem. Anything else? Yeah, and this is. Were there any additional answers you needed from us on this?
I just need to know if we're all on board to move forward with this proposal.
Like, I think some of us are not necessarily thrilled about the random idea and wish we had more time, but we all kind of understand why that's happening, and like Amanda has a good point of, Sue's thing of double check that that seems to be okay with the authors.
I just have one additional on that. I think I can, just in the name of time and being able to use the resource, I think I can get on board with that. But it would be nice to just have, I see, it must be a new fishing pier, but are we, is there something about, only one proposal per agency, or, okay.
Well, just keep thinking, Jessica's gonna do a bang up job on this, and maybe next year there'll be another 500,000.
Yeah, it's entirely true. And we also have some other pots of money that are similar to this for other things that we'll be seeing soon.
Yeah, so I don't see a downside.
Mr. Chair, the other thing to think about is maybe there are some companies, businesses, organizations out there that if a park agency doesn't get this grant, might step up. I'm thinking, I don't want to name names because this is on public record, but I can think of businesses where it would be to their advantage to do that kind of advertising to help support something like this. And, we might be able to help
promote fishing piers just with this less than satisfactory amount of money to begin with.
With the caveat that we can only give money to regional park implementing agencies.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about them giving the money to us, I'm talking about them partnering with the agencies.
I was gonna note, and maybe in the conversation that we request that Judd have with the authors, to explain the actual costs of these, just so when, you know, along with the process, so there's not the, what, we only funded 4 things, you know.
Make sure they realize they're only getting 4 for it.
Yes, this is very limited and what the cost of those are. I think that's also important to communicate upfront.
Sure. Okay. And if you have any ideas about possible generic policy for such things in the future, keep those in mind, because it might be something that could be useful to us someday. But for now, I think we're good, and thank you, Jessica. We'll get for a more detailed thing next month. That then brings us to the reports section of our meeting. I don't believe, I'll say one thing is there's cute little buttons in the back for the Imagine 2050 plan that have some neat artwork. I don't know who did the artwork, but I'm sure staff can maybe tell us later. Any commissioners have, yes, Cecily?
Well, I wish Anthony was here because last month he was talking about the need for the ENTRF.
Yes.
To have other ways for agencies to be able to apply. And so I did some research, and one of our council members, Gail Cedarberg, is on the Board of Environmental Innovations Initiatives, EI. And they're one of the agencies that has a working group looking at getting this 1.5% of the ENTRF money into the hands of, you know, maybe organizations run by people of color or, you know, disadvantaged communities. And so I've been talking with Conservation Minnesota because they're the ones running the campaign. I think it's their C4. And of course, we will all vote for it on November 5th. So I'm sure I'll know more soon.
Oh, I did see on their website that they're listing organizations that have passed resolutions supporting it. So
It's huge.
Consider whether the council wants to be one of those. Leave that to Sue to figure out.
Can we do that? No, I don't think we can do that. We're a government entity. And
There are other government, some of our implementing agencies are on the list.
well,
Whatever that means.
Yeah,
Not constrained by the state.
we'll check it out.
Yeah, I have no idea how that works, but I saw government entities on there and went, huh, interesting. Anyone else, other commissioners? Liaison, Sue, do you have anything for us? Sue?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a report for us?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Other than to say that, that 2050 plan is out there, we're seeking input. Please share your thoughts, whether it's on parks and trails or any other segment. We're looking for as much feedback as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Staff?
I'll pick up where Sue left off. I will send out just the landing page for the Imagine 2050 comment section, so you can get into all the plans and provide comments. These beautiful buttons, Amanda Lovely, when she came with her jumpsuit a few months ago, and Ellie Hohulin and the team are working hard. They're currently like in the garage, like doing something with big posters. But they're working with a whole slew of artists, both visual artists and engagement artists, to encourage people to help, you know, imagine what they want the region to be like by 2050. So I don't know all the artists' names. I should. There are 4 designs for, and there's I think at least 12 buses out there. Is that right? that are riding around, so I've currently seen 3 of the 4 buses. I've seen the water bus like 20 times. Tony grabbed a canoe, which is part of the water bus. I grabbed the land use one, but there's little postcards back there if you wanna grab bigger pictures of the artwork. It is quite beautiful. There are also a bunch of fun events coming up. The first one is the Monarch Festival at Nokomis, Lake Nokomis, this Saturday. I think it starts at 10 and goes till 4:30, something in that neighborhood. But there's gonna be a lot of music, there's gonna be a lot of food, and there will be Imagine 2050. And I think all 4 buses will be there. That's fun. I'll be there from 2:30 to 4:30. Bring cash because the person who sells these amazing tamales requires cash, no credit. Couldn't get me last year, it was cruel. But this year, no, it's not gonna happen. And then there's a few other engagement opportunities. One's at Lebanon Hills on the 22nd of September. I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. Chromosome is like in St. Paul on University Avenue. That's gonna be on Friday the 20th. But there's a slew of about 8 or 9 events coming up. So check them out, they're special.
Are they all listed on the website you're gonna send?
I will send you the events,
Okay.
the list of events that are going on. There's this one guy, his name is James Everest, and he's a sound artist. But I haven't seen or heard this, but supposedly he'll be at Crosby Farm coming up sometime soon, so in St. Paul. And he does it at night, and there's like a naturalist that take people through these different walls of sound. And I heard it's a really just amazing experience. So check it out. And take a couple buttons. If we run out, I've got more. I wanted to mention, first of all, thank Jonathan and Three Rivers Park District for hosting our next Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission meeting on October 3rd at Baker Park Reserve. This Baker is another one of these really big park reserves that's got a lot of stuff going on. And they are in the midst of a long-range planning process, so they're thinking about it and they're thinking about the future of it. So Jonathan, I just wanted to say thank you, not only for hosting us, but providing transportation. Our tour is gonna start at 4, so we're gonna front end the tour just because the days are getting shorter. The staff team, we're already talking about how to shrink our presentation so that we're not there all night. We will be as tight and as concise as possible. But I'm really looking forward to that.
So when you say we won't be there all night,
I mean, we'll definitely be there, we'll be out by 10. But that's a joke. I think that the actual meeting's gonna start hopefully at 5 or before, and then we will really shoot for, let's go with, I know we've got, Jessica herself is bringing 4 items, but 3 acquisitions, and then the notice of funding availability. Those are gonna be short items though. Tracy, we have no, we don't have any plans. Do we have any long-range plans that are ready?
Yeah,
And then we're gonna bring the Parks and Trails Planning Handbook, which you've seen before, so
so we should be prepared to camp out there.
just camp out, there's a bar in the, no, that's
It's good to know.
it's a golf course for crying out loud.
That's the thing, we're in the country clubhouse, so it's not,
Yeah, we'll be meeting at the golf club.
Yeah,
Okay.
we haven't got the tea times yet, but that's coming.
Is there a restaurant there? Can we provide dinner?
We'll look into that, Sandy, that's a good point. We'll bring there will be something to eat just because if we get past 6 o'clock.
Sue can do whatever she wants, but the rest of you
In
can't.
past times where we had these park visits, we've started the park visit at like 3 o'clock so that we were ready to go for the business portion by 4, and we didn't run over so much, so something to think about. It's a good suggestion, and I am thinking about that. I'm just worried about Cecily driving, actually Cecily
No, I'm
can't
not
make
gonna
it,
be
yeah. The distance and then people who work, I just worry that, it will be hard for people to get there. That was my number one concern. We can put that on the table if people are interested in starting at 3 with a tour. Is that something people could accommodate? Chris, David, Amanda?
I also won't be there, I'm out of the country. so-
Okay,
Should we have our meeting wherever you're gonna be?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm flying back that day, so if
think
you wanna
we're
be on
allowed
an
to,
airplane
actually.
from Munich, sure.
Oh,
I mean, I'd prefer the later time myself, but if I'm the only one, oh well.
Sorry, Tony, you're in the first tax.
Is there anyone that has concerns about that? Please, I really do wanna make this manageable for people that work.
I have a wife who has a birthday that day, just saying.
Bring her along, Baker.
I'm fine, if you want me there at 10 a.m.
Yeah, you can do it. Jonathan, do you think it would be a big deal to start earlier?
Not at all.
Okay, we'll propose that, Tony, if you can live with it.
Either way, it's gonna be all right.
I just have
You're
to
gonna
take
be
more
okay.
vacation, it's fine.
Tony's a seasoned employee, he'll be fine. I can figure it out. Okay, so we'll shoot for 3. I will confirm that with everyone, and I will talk, Sandy and I will talk, because we'll work out the details.
Thanks, so Anthony and Tess as well.
Yeah, we'll check with Anthony. Tess just started a new job, she had covered for someone this evening, so.
Which probably means she doesn't have any vacation.
Yeah,
So
so
that might be
we'll
interesting.
double check, I'll check with Tess and Tony, or Anthony, excuse me.
Okay.
And then, thanks Jonathan for the flexibility.
And we're meeting there or we're meeting here first?
Meeting out there.
We're meeting out there. So we're gonna do the tour first, Chris, and then we'll do the meeting.
Yeah, so we do, and show up at the site where we're gonna do our meeting, we will depart from there for the tour and then return and do our meeting.
Yeah, exactly. So go to the clubhouse, which I sent the address out today, but we'll get it out with the meeting.
specifics in the meeting notice.
Okay.
And just reiterating what Tony said, grab some buttons and postcards if you'd like them. They're collector's items.
Okay, then we're ready to adjourn, thank you.